have for people viewing today that have not been a little cautious in the use of their credit cards, and the credit card interest rates are way up here, and the credit card debt is way up here, and they make minimal payments, and it's not chipping away at the balance, really?
Those are people who definitely should think about seeing a lawyer and thinking about the possibility of a Chapter 13. I often talk to people about that problem, and I say, look, if you took all of your credit cards and you put it into one big loan, how big would that loan be? If it's going to be $25,000, and the consequence of you're getting this loan from me, no interest, don't have to pay me back, of $25,000, is that I say to you, you can't borrow money for 2 years, which is about the way it works today. So if that's what you're going to do, definitely see an attorney, because he can give you that situation. You file that bankruptcy, you get, in effect, the discharge of all that $25,000, and you hurt your credit for about 2 years.
But how can one, if they, again, going back to the tough economic times, the high unemployment, if they're not getting income in and they're able to get that loan, or they're getting minimal income in, people are living from paycheck to paycheck, and some people are not even able to do that. Where do they fall in the economic crack of today?
Well, those are the people who have to look much harder at how they're doing their finances. If a lot of your income is going to debt, or the servicing of debt, going to the credit card company, that's when you have to decide, well, is this really what I want to do? And if you have credit card debt of more than 50% of your income, then you definitely need to see somebody about taking some action with it. Now, some people, of course, go on the internet and they get to these programs that claim that they're going to wipe out your debt by doing this debt negotiation. You got to remember a couple of things about that. When you do that, it ruins your credit. That's number one. Number two, very few of those plans are ever successful. So before you do that, you need to really think very hard about it, and never, and this is my own personal rule, never deal with anybody who is located in a state other than your own. Because if they cheat you, you have no recourse against them. You can't really go to California and sue somebody if you're in New York. Same thing, you can't go from California to Florida to sue somebody. That's maybe what a big company can do, but the average person who's struggling with their debts can't do that.
I remember taking business class one time, and one of the things that they said was, when you set up, and we're talking about New York State, when you set up your contracts, make sure you include in your contract that this contract is under New York State law only. And you're saying, like, if it's California, do the same thing, or Florida, do the same thing to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of companies put that into their statements, and if you look, you'll see that a lot of the credit card companies, if you go to the back of the form, in the back of the form it'll say what state laws are going to apply. What they don't tell you about that is if you're in New Jersey and they're applying Wisconsin law or South Dakota law, or in the favorite of the credit card companies is Nevada law,
okay,
that court in New Jersey is going to have to apply Nevada law. That doesn't happen very often. What happens very often is the court in New Jersey will apply New Jersey law, the court in New York will apply New York law, the court in California will apply California law, unless somebody tells them that we're really operating under some other state's law. But beyond that, the average consumer usually can rely on his own state's law, which says what contracts can be dealt with that way. Some contracts have to be handled under the local law.
Growing up, I remember my parents and our generation kind of making fun of our grandparents who had this, what was called a depression mentality. But now we're looking back at our grandparents and saying, whoa, they really understood something that, and went through something that we didn't appreciate, and they were smarter economically than we realized. Do you agree with that?
I think they were smarter economically when they came out the other side. And my real fear today is that we're not going to be smarter when we come out the other side. We haven't taken any of the steps that the country took after the Depression to prevent it from happening again. After the Depression, there was a major restructuring of banks and securities. We know we got in trouble with banks and securities here. We haven't taken any steps to correct that problem. So we could be looking at the same thing happening in 10 years.
I was talking with someone yesterday preparing for this interview, and I've always felt that one of the big problems in American education is that we don't teach money management in grammar school or high school. And he said, I remember taking a home economics course where I learned how to make a souffle and learned how to make a pillow in home economics, but there was nothing about economics. Do you think this is a change that should be made in the American education system?
Oh, definitely. The bankruptcy court system has a program that goes into grade schools now and high schools to try to teach basic economics to individuals. I think the problem is that we tend to teach platitudes and not the reality. Nobody teaches, I think, the average student that the bank is going to try to cheat you, which is what the bank did here. They cheated not only the homeowner, they cheated the person who was investing in the mortgages. I mean, it's very rare you have a situation where both ends of a contract lose money and the guy in the middle makes it all. And that's exactly what happened here. The consumer of the mortgage got a high interest, difficult to pay mortgage. The guy who was investing at the other end got what he thought was a secured return on his money, and neither of those individuals has been benefited by the system.
What advice would you have in today's contemporary economic society to an individual or to a family that is right there in the middle? They could go the bad way, or they could slowly go the good way. What advice would you offer to them?
Insurance. That's the problem. If you look at the people who file bankruptcy and you look at the difference between those people and the people who have not filed bankruptcy, all the people who filed bankruptcy are people who had some catastrophic problem happen to them. You look at all the people in Japan today, they did not expect to have an earthquake and a tsunami on the same day in the same place. People who have good insurance for health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, those are much less likely to need my services or to need the services of any bankruptcy attorney.
Catastrophic event you're referring to, like a house burning down or a flood destroying a house or an unexpected medical expense, right?
Right. Also, the loss of employment. People who have some kind of alternative invested in their mind, they figured out what I'm going to do if I lose my job. Those people are less likely to lose it all. So even if you're working and you got a stable job, you're working for one of the states, right? In the states, that was a good job, safe job, and that's why you took it. It was a safe job. You need to have an exit strategy. Just like the government doesn't seem to have an exit strategy in Afghanistan, that's a problem. So the average person needs to have their own exit strategy. What do I do if the worst happens?
We talk about state government like Wisconsin, New York State, other states are thinking of having state layoffs. Well, if those state layoffs do take place, the money that the state employee puts into the economy ceases to go into the economy. They cut back at the stores, they cut back on car purchases. So then the stores, the car dealers, and the restaurants that are not having as much business, then they start have to laying off employees, and they're employees that would spend money here and there. It's the economic multiplier effect in reverse, isn't it?
That's very true. What happens we see when we have these major social changes, at least on the business end of bankruptcy, is that certain businesses come in as a group. So you'll see all restaurants filing now. Why? Because 2 years ago we had this big downturn. People stopped going out to restaurants. The restaurants struggled along for a year or two, and now they have to come in and restructure their debt. Same thing years ago. We had printers go out of business because the society changed on them. You're going to see a lot of secondary bankruptcy that results from those state employees who don't necessarily lose their job, but they lose some of their income. And when they lose some of their income, they stop spending. And cutbacks come in all kinds of areas, from car purchases to home purchases to just generally how much clothing you buy. And with clothing prices rising because materials are rising, that's going to hurt a lot of small retailers.
One of the smartest professors I ever had in college was teaching economics. And one thing he would stress almost on a weekly basis: always live beneath the standard of living that you're capable of living at, because you never know what's going to happen.
Well, that's a good attitude to have. The problem is where you put the excess money. People have been putting their excess money into 401ks, and they're doing that because we tell people you need to retire, and there's not going to be any fixed income pensions anymore. You're going to have to put all your money into your 401k. What we don't tell these people is what happens if you need that money and you're not 59 and a half years old. What's going to happen when you try to take that money out? You're going to get a penalty on it. You're going to get a tax on it. And all too often, very conservative spenders come into my office because something came up. Somebody got sick. The mortgage went crazy. The property taxes went crazy. Some states have huge property taxes. Those people take the money out of the 401k. They start out borrowing it, and when they can't pay the borrowing back, they end up taking it out. We end up with this tax penalty. That's too late. The minute you find yourself in the situation where you need to start taking money out of a 401k, you need to see somebody.
I was going to say, but you sort of answered it. To avoid the tax penalty, you can take out a loan on your 401k, but
well, then you got to pay the loan back, and that's going to lower your income. So that guy who started out, he was living below his means. Now his means just went significantly down because he's trying to pay back his 401k loan. Life insurance is a better situation. It does almost the same thing as a Roth IRA. You put the money into a life insurance policy. You get it in there. If you die, of course, you get the benefit.
Right.
If you don't die at the end, you get the money back. The interest you earn, you don't pay taxes on until you take the money back. If you need to borrow it, you can borrow it. There's no penalty. All right. There's no penalty. There's no increase in your income if you take all the money out. So if you're going to save for a rainy day, save that way. You'll get a pretty decent interest rate, and you won't have a penalty.
That's better for the person that got a straight life insurance policy with a cash value that grows annually, right?
Right. I mean, some of them are fixed to the market. Those are called variable life. Some of them are just straight. You're going to get 3, 4, 5%, whatever the policy provides for.
Before going on the air today, we briefly spoke about the Bernie Madoff situation, and now he's making statements from prison that federal authorities and bankers knew how precarious the situation was and what he was doing. Forget about those people. What about the average person who gets the monthly statement and believes the monthly statement, that this is the balance of their account? They have no way of actually knowing because they are trusting the integrity of the bank or the individual that's managing their finances, right? Is there any other way they can find out?
Well, if the average person puts their money into a bank account, obviously those are insured.
Right.
All right. If you're doing what a lot of people do, is putting your money into a 401k, and that's being managed by somebody for you, what you're really relying upon is not so much the manager as the guy who does the rating. The rating service comes in and says these guys are A or B or C, and you're relying upon the rating company. That's where the Madoff situation shows the weakness of the system. If the rating company isn't doing their job, if the SEC isn't doing its job, then yeah, the Ponzi scheme is always going to work because there's nobody there to oversee and stop it. What you should know is if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So if they're going up every year and never taking a loss, then probably that's not the investment you want. You want to make sure that you're dealing with somebody who's dealing on the same playing field you are, and they're taking the same risks you are.